Welcome to That Moto Show with Dirt Bike TV's Jake Clark and producer Donnie Bales.
Number 7. Can you believe that, Donnie?
Yeah, we're moving quite along here.
It's been a busy week. We had some big news this last week. We had our FMF The Drop. Why don't you stand up and let's show that shirt off.
I got this, the J. Clark Drop shirt.
There we go. The back. Yeah, everybody's kind of seen that. We had it posted all over, so that was really cool. That
You made me wear it today.
Yeah, I showed up because I forgot mine. I was going to bring it to show, and but I think everybody's seen it. And then
I'd be like a good employee wearing it.
Right. So Spencer, show the.
We got
Spencer.
Buddy.
Yeah, it came with a bead buddy, which is a really cool gift.
And a piston.
A free piston.
Yeah.
Okay, that's pretty cool.
And then a real good sticker sheet. Nice thick one.
I can't believe how thick they are.
Yeah.
Real. Like
From
that's no like wimpy sticker sheet. That's a good one.
No, that's like
that'll go on your bike.
Yeah, that's decal sticker stuff.
Yeah, and Decal Works does the graphics for factory KTM. You know, they do like high level graphics. So we got a really cool show today. So it's a little bit different. We're going to bring in Jade Dungey, who's a factory mechanic. So we're going to bring him in, and we're going to talk a little bit about being a mechanic and those types of things, and then get into our questions as well.
Yeah,
so,
that's my wonder why.
Right. And it just worked out that it was episode 7. I thought that was really cool. When we were doing the last week, when we were doing the number 6, you know.
Yeah.
I was like, hey, so that's going to work out really well. You know,
it's perfect.
So that was cool. So yeah, thanks for setting that up. We'll get into it later, but he's got connections with Grant Langston, our buddy, so we can talk about that a little bit, and that was cool.
Yeah.
So anyway, so we're getting in here. A couple things. Make sure to check out our YouTube. 125 hacks and tips for your dirt bike. It's got a lot of stuff for you guys out there that are wanting to learn more about your bike. We also have that really good in-depth brake bleeding video. We get a lot of people who struggle with brake bleeding, flushing. We got really good tips on that as well, so you want to check that out. So I think we'll get what's next. My first tip, we're going to do this. Donnie showed me this one. He had this. He didn't show it to me. I just saw it over in his shop. I'm like, what'd you do? You cut your tape in half, And he says he cuts it in quarters sometimes on his little homemade bandsaw he made. And because I use blue tape a lot because we make notes on the bikes. It's really important. It's easy. I don't care if you're old or young. It's really easy to forget stuff to do. Like you get back, you wash your bike, and you're like, okay, I'm gonna check the oil and the filter, and I got a loose spoke. I'll throw a piece of tape on a spoke, knowing that we need to go back and check it later, that hey, this way we don't forget anything. So having blue tape handy, and so what he's done, he's cut it so that he can just easily pull off a piece instead of having.
Honestly, I swear it's that I can't stand the way tape torn looks. So I'm like, I just want it square, and I would take them off and I would cut them, and I'm like, well, I'm just gonna cut the tape.
So anyway, really cool little tip there. That was fun, and Donnie's like that. He's a baller. He can just cut up tape. So I thought that was cool.
I don't think the dollar I spent is balling there.
So anyway, that was pretty fun. So I think our next step here is, what do we do? Just bring in our guest?
I think we bring in our guest.
All right, let's do it.
Okay,
we got Jade Dungey in here, which is really cool. And a lot of people recognize the name, right?
Yeah. I'm Ryan Dungey's brother. I always get at the races.
Yes, we get that a lot, is that, got a famous last name and so forth. So
do you ever have fans do that? Like, is your brother here?
Well, they see, like, I have a tattoo from when I was younger. I got my last name, and you'll be at the race like, oh, you related to Ryan? I'm like, yeah, that's my brother. And they're like, no,
you're the older brother.
Yeah, and then me and Ryan were joking around because when AP won San Diego a couple weeks ago, he's like, oh, I'm Jade's brother. So it's kind of
that's cool.
Very cool. So anyway, it's cool. You're at a factory race team, and for those that don't know, you're wrenching for Aaron Plessinger on the factory KTM team.
Yeah.
And so that's been last year and this year?
This is actually my third year with AP. So I came from Honda in 21. Came back to KTM, and I've been with AP since 22.
That's awesome.
Is that funny that you had Chase at Honda, and then now he's back on KTM? Does that?
Yeah, it's kind of a small world, but yeah, I think when he was trying to come to KTM, I'd always talk to him and told him it's a good place and a lot of room for you to grow. So kind of.
You guys remain close when.
Yeah, I still talk.
Nice.
We're still buddies and stuff. So
that's awesome. And so most of us, everybody knows you guys are from Minnesota. Tell us a little bit about that, and this, especially real quick about like growing up there in the Moto and so forth. We've seen a lot on your guys' family and so forth, and a lot of that great story. Donnie and I have always been big Ryan fans, and so we always liked his, just everything about. Donnie's got a huge, number 5 crush, but it's well deserved. He just and a lot of it has to do with the way he would act, and the way he would present himself. But growing up that way, tell us what that, and when growing up, what brought you into mechanicking, so to speak,
Yeah, growing up, I mean, when we got serious around 85s, 125s. I mean, we all had, between me and my brothers, we had 12 bikes. So my dad was always pouring concrete, and he'd always help us set, when he was done with work. But I started I'll start helping Dad on bikes, and then he kind of taught me just little tricks and stuff, and just kind of just grew into a passion. And
yeah, as a mini dad, right? All the mini dads are mechanics. That's really
So how much older are you than Ryan?
I'm 35, and I think Ryan just turned 33, so we're like a year and a half, close to 2 years.
So you guys be riding together a lot.
Yeah, we always ride, and then our little brother, he was probably 5-6 years younger than us. He's pretty much the reason why we all had bikes, because he did good at Loretta's, and he got us actually the amateur Suzuki support ride.
Okay, that's funny. I don't know if I realized that.
Yeah.
So the first time I ever saw Ryan in person racing, I think, was in Mammoth. Actually, he came up. He was in an amateur team with Coalgrass, and they had brought him out. And I'm like, they're bringing this guy from back east out, which isn't normal for Mammoth back then. It wasn't normal to bring in, because it's kind of a West Coast race. Mammoth is over the years. You wouldn't get a lot of people from back east, but he brought him out there, and I think he did really well.
Yeah, I think he was battling with McGrath, and he was all stoked. I don't think McGrath was stoked having this little young guy on his butt, but I think that was his first time even going to California, and they brought the box van up, and him and my dad went, and it was a pretty fun trip.
Hold on, I saw though back a little bit before, I think that like 04, 05, you were racing pro at that time, right?
Yep.
There was like a Minnesota State champion or Supercross championship or something like that.
Yeah, we raced our local. We had this little Supercross series, and it was local right by the house, and we'd always ride there. And
so were you faster than Ryan at that point?
At one point I was faster, and then when Ryan got on to 250Fs, then he started kicking my butt.
I see. Okay.
But it took him until then. It wasn't like he was beating you on an 85.
No, we all progressed, and I was the fastest, and then Ryan was the second fastest, and our little brother, and then it kind of tiptoed, and Ryan kicked our butts.
It happens.
All right, very cool. So, and then when you're growing up, when did you realize, hey, I'm not going to keep progressing at racing, right? Like,
I turned about 18, and I'm like, you know what? It's either go to school, or a lot of my buddies were racing, and I didn't want to go down the route and just be a privateer. So I ended up went to school to be a carpenter or a cabinet builder.
Okay.
And then I went to school, did that for 2 years, and I was working in a cabinet shop, and I watched my boss get his thumb cut off that day. He was cutting the wood wrong, and Ryan called me that day. He's like, hey, I need a practice mechanic, because he just signed with Suzuki, and he was going to be riding in Minnesota. So I said, yeah, let's make it happen, and it's kind of went from there.
Did you negotiate a deal with him? Was he paying you?
I think I was getting like $100 a week or something.
Okay. Big money. Living at home?
Yeah, lived at home, so
So that's how you got started, was being Ryan's practice mechanic when his first 250 deal, kind of thing.
Yep. He signed in 06, and then 07 I started as practice mechanic, and then 07 to 09 I was his practice mechanic, and then came back home, poured some concrete with my dad, and then moved out to California and got a ride out at a job ride at KTM. So
when you were a practice mechanic on that 250, that bike, that was the Kawasaki Suzuki. Remember that first, right in there? Right?
Actually, it was right after that. He rode when he first signed, it was a 05, 06 chassis, and then the next year was the aluminum when it was just a Suzuki.
Yeah.
And that's the bike I got to work on, and that thing was pretty trick. I mean, he just did grips and graphics. So
it was a lot better then, but when it was that Cowie version, that steel frame one, that bike was rough.
One of my first 4-strokes was that Kawasaki, was an 05, and it was our first time working on 4-strokes. We had a lot of problems. Overheating and stuff. It was tough. It was tough. And you didn't know all this stuff now.
Didn't like Mitch or somebody bring in like a Porsche mechanic engineer to kind of figure those 4-strokes out?
Yeah, they had that, I forget his name. Drano was his name?
Drano or Drino, like a Italian maybe or something.
He came from, I think, Toyota Engineering, and then he basically was like, one of the main reasons why they were so good, because he had 4-strokes the back of his hand. They were so advanced.
They got those things dialed.
Yeah.
So you enjoyed doing that, and then when you came out to California to work with KTM, what year was that?
Well, actually, I came out to California in 09, and I actually was dating my wife and her brother's Grant Langston. Mm-hmm. So her mom and dad got me a job at Langston Motorsports. So I worked there for I think it was like 6-7 months, and then her uncle Andrew Langston, he was getting ready to move into the engine department. Well, he put my name in to be Mike Brown's mechanic for the off-road team, So that's kind of how I got my foot in the door at KTM.
That's perfect. That's perfect. So you know all them. Andrew's awesome. He still does most of my crank rebuilds.
Yeah.
He knows what he's doing. He's awesome. So you got him, and so you learned a lot from all of them, and of course having a, is he an 8-time champ or so?
Yeah.
With GL, so it's kind of fun.
7, really, if you count Supermoto.
Yeah. So anyway, that's really cool. And then when you get over to KTM off-road, how long did you do the off-road segments?
So I was on off-road from end of 2009 to 2011. I did 2 years with Brownie, and then my brother had signed with KTM, and I really just, my passion was just supercross, motocross, like most mechanics. So I got my foot in the door, and then I was the test mechanic for a couple years, and then just kind of progressed, learned tricks from Carlos, Frankie, Raj, Ian, all the little trinkets they've learned, and they kind of put me under their wing and taught me. And it was kind
Who was your first rider? Was it Dean Ferris? Was that
my first Red Bull KTM rider? Was Dean Ferris, and then I had Justin Hill, and then after Hill I was Trey Kennard, Brock Tickle, and then I left to go to Geico Honda with Chase Sexton, only because I was going to be in-house that year, like test mechanic, and I was like, I'm still young, I want to be a mechanic, so I was still eager, so I went to Geico Honda, and then I followed Chase to factory Honda, and then I just couldn't do the drive anymore. It was like 5 hours round trip driving from Marietta to LA every day, so I came back home to
So did you get matched with Chase by chance?
Yeah, I at the time it was Dan Bentley. He was the team manager, and I wanted to work for a rider. So I think originally it was supposed to be for Hunter Lawrence, he said, but then something had happened and they needed a mechanic for Chase. I was like, yeah, let's go for it. So.
Well, that worked out because you got a championship.
Yeah, we got 2 championships in Supercross. Our first year we won, and then the second year we backed it up, and then they moved us over to the factory Honda rig, and yeah, it was a good experience.
Well, and I will say, for whatever it's worth, just knowing the way business works, you had to keep relationships pretty good with KTM to be able to go back there.
Yeah, I mean, I always, if I ever leave somewhere, I always try to leave on good terms, and KTM's they were always good to me, and the whole reason I left the first time was I just wanted a rider, and that was just me being selfish, and I just was young.
Did they try to keep you staying there?
Yeah, they were bummed when I left, but it was just, at the end of the day, it's just business, and they're cool. They've been around a long time. They get it. So.
And Roger and Ian are pretty awesome as far as
they're really good dudes.
And everybody over there is pretty cool. So it's really a nice atmosphere. It looks like, and then they work hard. But I guess most of the teams do. But I definitely see it.
Yeah, like if your goal is to win on Saturday, but if if the rider's having problems, Sunday their brains are thinking, and Monday morning they're in the machine shop, or they'll make it happen. The winning's their passion. I mean, like any team, but these guys, they live to win. So it's awesome.
That's what I noticed. Okay, so now you're out here in Marietta, California still, and you got wife and kids?
Yeah, I got a wife and 2 kids, and yeah.
And you're totally great. What are you still enjoying the traveling to races and all that?
Yeah, most teams. Our team's very fortunate. They give us a day off during the week, and I'm fortunate I have a practice mechanic in Florida, so he takes care of AP when he's not in California. So if I had to do both, I don't think my wife would let me do this. So.
So you definitely get some more time during the week.
Yeah, once we're racing, it gets quiet. Like off season, they're in California, so I am wide open, but it evens itself out during race season. So
I get
my schedule.
All right. Well, what we do here is answer questions, and so we don't want to get too far off of base. And so Spencer and Donnie are going to fire me some questions. All these questions, really, I've already emailed the guys back.
Yeah.
So I don't leave them hanging, so they don't have to wait like a few weeks or a month to get their answer. So we try to help people out when they email us questions. We got a few different people. You'll even know some of them that I'll get some help from. Some of them and then some you just are really tough, but. Good bike maintenance is one of the problems. I guess before we get too far started, have you thought about, like, now that you're a factory guy compared to, especially when you see recreational beginner guys, or when you guys were first starting, what do you think the biggest thing or things that people don't do or do wrong to their bikes, even if they're just recreational riding or just basic racing, that they don't do enough of and then are bummed when they're bike's not working or whatever?
Knowing from when we were younger that we just didn't know. Back then you'd have YouTube and stuff to do that stuff. As for me, it was grease. Like we had grease, but you didn't know to do the bolts, the link. Like you just pop on and ride it.
Right.
So I'd say grease. That's one of the biggest preventative.
You're building AP's bikes from scratch?
Yeah, all of the bikes at KTM, they're built out of parts, so everything comes from the ground up.
How many bikes do you think you're building a year?
Well, each guy has a race bike, but that race bike gets rebuilt every weekend. I'd say through the whole year, we probably go through the chassis themselves, probably 15, but they're getting rebuilt every 30
So
hours.
my point is now, how many buckets of grease are you going through?
You go through a lot of tubes of grease.
That's what I'm saying, it's like-
Everybody's got their own little niche that they like to put on the bike, but yeah, just grease and high pressure lube on the bolts. And
Hey, so real quick then, before I forget then, so for Supercross, what's your schedule like? Let's tell people your schedule. I guess that'd be really fun. You guys fly out to, let's start when you fly out to the race.
yeah, so like if everything's going smooth and your rider's happy and you're not reinventing the wheel, you usually you go to the shop on Tuesday and then get your parts, whatever you need to rebuild your bike, put in your suitcase, and then Wednesday, not most teams, but our team, we get a travel day. So we take Wednesday off with the family, and then we fly out Thursday, fly all day Thursday, and then Friday we set up the tent, make sure the race bike's all good because we built it the previous weekend, and then Saturday go racing, and usually Saturday, if everything's, you did your job right, Saturday's kind of like a day off because like you're just making sure the bike's clean, checking your chain and stuff, and if the rider's happy, it's pretty smooth sailing.
Race day's easy for you.
Yeah, race
What
day
is
is
what
easy
he's
day.
saying. He's just washing bike in between practices.
It looks like the busiest day, too.
People think it is, but it's actually easier.
It's actually then Sunday we get up, usually get the truck at 7:30 and the whole bike comes apart down to the frame, and that's the day. It's kind of like where you do most of your work and make sure you put the bike back together, make sure nothing's broke or anything, and then
Are you putting a new engine in?
we go, most teams nowadays they go 2 races they go 2 races on an engine. It's more just preventative maintenance.
Right.
They'll send it back to the shop, put new gaskets just to make sure nothing's broke or anything. But usually, like with KTM, we have a system like our bikes go 30 hours, no problem on practice bikes. So it's just all hours. But
So then on Sunday, if you're away, you're there all day working on the bike.
We start at 7, and a normal build for us, if it's not a mudder, we're done by like 4 or 5 o'clock. But you're in the semi and you have everything you need, solvent tank parts. So it's really quick.
New suspension on?
We go 2 races on suspension.
Okay.
Like I said, you could go more, but it's just more just to make sure everything's solid. And then we usually do plastic, chain guides, just more cosmetic stuff to make the bike look pretty. But
And what would be the difference for outdoor? How's the schedule change?
it's about the same. We come in, build Sunday, fly home Monday, and then do it all over again the next week.
So similar deal.
Yeah.
But now will motors and suspension go as long?
Yeah, we try to stick to the same schedule on outdoors. Motocross, we might do 1 race and then keep freshening it up just because of the heat. It's
Right.
depending on the race, but the first part of the season it's usually cool out, so we try to go a couple races. But
Yeah. Now, and I've seen and you've been in there to the engine build shop.
Oh, yeah.
And I got a buddy in there that works, and it's just awesome when they seeing how they tear those things down. And what's really cool is what he's saying, when they tear those engines down, 99% of the time they just look like new.
Yeah.
Everything. So it is preventative. They're just making sure everything's perfect. And
Well, the shop looks like new. Well, it is new, but the shop looks like new.
and most of the parts get reused. They have time limits on things. And some parts will just go right back in, and some parts will get timed out after a certain amount of time. So I think it's really
it'll
cool.
trickle down to practice bike and then eventually time out. But yeah, they have a system, and
It's awesome.
knock on wood, it's been good. So
That's true. I mean, as far as DNFs go, I mean, honestly, most of the bikes in factory teams nowadays, man, you hardly 250F's a little bit more. We'll see a few things. We've seen a few guys, and we don't got to mention anything, but we've seen a few over the. And honestly, I know some of the bikes. Some of the bikes are maybe pushing it a little bit harder than what their stock bike.
that's how the 250 class is.
Yeah.
You're trying to get every ounce of power. So like you're on the limit, and if on the KTM side we try to be a little bit on the safer side, but like it's just you're trying to risk it for the biscuit. You want as much power you can, and it's a competitive class, and it's just part of racing.
Your brother has probably the record for the weirdest. I don't say DNS, but fit. Like his chain came off that one time. His gas cap came off.
The gas cap.
Yeah. It's
The
shock.
The shock.
Yeah.
The shock. And then his ignition deal.
I wasn't there when I was on KTM when he was at Suzuki when he had those problems, but a lot of the problems when he had a KTM was just like it was a new bike.
Yep.
And you.
Oh yeah, like I was mentioning, that was all the old bike. That
Yeah,
was the
you don't
other
know
brand.
until you go racing, and we've learned from that. But it's crazy. You could never mimic practice what you do at the race. Like stuff you happen at the race, you'll never even have happen at all. It's crazy. Same with Loretta's. I remember we go to Loretta Lynn's and stuff that happened there. You're like, how does this even happen? It just happens at that race.
Yeah, I can attest to that as well. So, all right, Spencer, you want to get us going with a question or two?
Yeah. All right, I'll get us going with a question. All right, so James H. says, thanks for providing great content for awesome sport. The topic of spark arrestor inserts seems to trigger a lot of people. I'm simply reaching out for your advice. I love my 2024 YZ450. I just installed an FMF system. What are the downsides performance-wise, if any, of completely removing the spark arrestor? I like the sound of it removed, and I only ride closed course moto tracks. I don't want to sacrifice performance for weight and sound. Just curious if you know the difference between how that bike will run with the spark arrestor in or out. I'd rather not cut the screen out. Thanks again for your time.
Sounds like he doesn't mind going deaf, like removing that thing.
But so we get this a lot because on the FMF has a really cool system. When you put it in, it has a little ring, a spiral ring to clip it in, which is really cool. And so we've shown it on Instagram a bunch of times, and people just kind of lose their minds. You guys like to see it, that it's cool, but then there's a lot of guys who are going, man, now you're breaking the law, whatever. It's like, hold on, we're riding at Glen Helen, riding at private tracks, so you don't have to have this in if you're riding it, if you're not riding any place that requires it. So that's the first thing, is you're not breaking any laws by having this out of the bike when you're at a track. Okay, so now there are a few tracks that do require it, like Gorman was one. I think they're kind of closed, but some places will require. As far as our 250Fs and 350s, we typically will take it out. It just kind of gives it a really good feel. But on the 450s, and we kind of like having it in, and we do cut the screen off just so it flows better and makes less heat. What we noticed with it in, if you're riding it hard like Moto, it gets really hot at the end cap. Now, if you're trail riding, it's not as big a deal, but if you're riding it hard trail. Now, so that's my thoughts there. What I thought of this question with you guys are probably tuning and playing for different reasons with sound.
The biggest thing is sound for us. A lot of the privateers, they'll take that out and you probably make your bike faster and stuff, but then the decimals go way up. So we'll get to sound tech in the morning, and a lot of the guys who don't have the inserts are way over. They blow past the decimal limit, but for us, that's basically just for sound limit. But
now you guys play with different inserts on your guys. You guys run different?
We can, but usually we just run whatever our company supplies with us. They just give us our best foot forward. But we can tune a little bit. But the big thing is a lot of teams, they'll go smaller just to meet sound requirements.
So they have to, especially these, and it's a little tougher on that sound to get through. And when they tech it, they actually mark the end of it. So it's actually marked in there, so you can't remove it after tech. If you moved it, then they'll see the paint mark. All right, what do we got next?
All right, Frederico D. Hello. Would like to ask you a question. The rear wheel of my KTM SXF 250 2023 fits the Husqvarna FC 250 2023. Are any modifications needed?
No. So that's what's really nice about the KTM brands of bikes. All that stuff's interchangeable. And 2324 is a new generation size axle, that new bike. But you can run your old wheels in the new bike with different spacers. That's all it takes. And honestly, you can go back to late 90s, early 2000s KTM wheels, and you can just get different spacers.
I think the hub's the same. It's just different wheel colors or spacers and stuff.
What about wheels for you guys? How long will you guys run a set of wheels?
Oh yeah.
Honestly, practice bikes we go 30 hours. Race bikes, it's more cosmetic. The sponsors want their stuff to look good, and we want to look good too. So
will those turn over to practice wheels?
Honestly, no. I'll keep the hub. We just cut the spokes and hoops, and then we'll just relace them at the shop. And we try to go probably a whole season on a set of hubs. Each guy gets 3 sets of wheels, so we just kind of alternate every weekend. So there's really not much time being put on one set of hub. It gets dispersed over 3 sets.
And what about maintenance on the hoop? I mean, do you find them supercross versus outdoors, then bending, or
it depends on rider. If a guy cases something, then you're gonna most likely have to replace it. But if you got a guy who's smooth and just make sure to keep up on your spoke torquing and everything, and the manufacturer, they send us a torque they want it at, and make sure everything's greased up good. It's pretty easy.
Yeah, and you build your own wheels.
Yeah, the DID, they're actually our new sponsor for our team, and they send the hub. They make a hub, spoke, and hoop, and they send us all the parts, and we kind of do it ourselves.
That's great. That's
nice.
All right, next.
Awesome. So this comes from Wenf G. He has a CRF 450X in 07, so older 450X. He got a Trail Tech fan, and he's trying to bend the tank to fit for the fan, because you kind of got to do some modification here, and he put a hole in his tank. Tank's in the garbage. He says, I'm sure I did something wrong, and I'm wondering if you might be able to give me some advice. I'm hoping not to do the same to the replacement that I just ordered. Love your videos. Thank you very much.
And so we've bent tanks. We've done this, and I got a question for you on tanks. We'll get to after this, because it made me think when I was reading this question last night. I was like, that'll be interesting. But with tanks, we use the IMS tank, and then on that bike you have to bend it back a little bit. So what we do is, obviously before there's any fuel in it on the ground, we heat it up with a heat gun or a torch. We get it really hot, and then but what he probably used was something very small to push on it. We get something big. I was thinking like the head of a hammer, like a ball peen hammer, like a big one that you can push against there, or something that you can hold down. And then I have somebody with an ice water with actually ice cubes in it and everything. And so once I just hold it in that position, and you want to make it, you don't want to get it too hot. That's the key. So you can almost touch your hand against it. Like, I have gloves on, but I just would barely touch it, and it's pretty hot. You're like, okay, it's warm, and you can just push on it and see it move in. And then pour the cold water on there and just hold it there while that cold water melts into that position. And that's it. And it's going to leave a nice smooth, and I think what his mistake was, he probably got it too hot, and he probably used something a little bit smaller, like maybe a screwdriver or something, and then it poked through. So unfortunately, like he said, there's no repairing it. I get questions on that too, about repairing plastic tanks. There's no way. I mean, it's nothing I've ever found. There's no magic wand to fix a plastic tank that has a problem. And I'm sure over the years we've had the plastic tanks, not old Hondas and Cowies. The insert would spin for your shroud. So those, I found a few fixes for those. Like fix it, hack fixes, but they'll get you by. So on those, one fix we found that was really cool that we did is we filled it with a JB Weld type putty. It was a different one, but a putty. We filled it with epoxy, and then just drilled a little hole in there, and then got a KTM screw, and we used KTM screws.
Oh, the little wood screw,
yeah.
Those wood screws are badass.
Yeah, so we used the KTM screw, because we used to make fun of the KTM screws when they first.
I totally made fun of them, and my buddy that rides a KX, he's like, I go, dude, those screws are the best in the world.
Never had one come out.
They're the best.
It's funny. We every weekend, like, it's kind of known, but the mechanics, we trade stuff. Like, if I need something from them, like, hey, I'll give you these rubber straps. You'd be surprised, like Honda, Cowie, they all get wood screws we trade out for them, and they use them in their like mud flaps or air
They
boxes.
want the screws.
Just because it's every week and you're tearing apart, and the Phillips screwdrivers, the little sixes just boom comes right out. So,
and it's light. The aluminum. There are there's different screws. There's the aluminum ones that are really light. They weigh like nothing. So anyway, so that's one little fix in the tanks. Now, as far as tanks, I was going to ask you, over the years, one little trick I don't think a lot of guys know is over the years, especially with the even two strokes, but the especially outdoor, like a Southwick, the size of the tank can actually be an issue for pro riders. Have you ever seen guys try to make the tanks bigger?
Yeah, back in the day when I was on off-road, I remember Brownie would race some select motocrosses, but I knew the tank wouldn't go, and we didn't really have access to bigger motocross tanks unless you wanted to show up with your big off-road IMS tank. But if I remember right, we would take boiling hot water, pour it in the tank, and then blow air in it, and you'd try to get a couple more liters or whatever, just to. And it wasn't big, but it was enough to kind of get you through. Yeah, that was like an older trick.
Would you do that on the bike so that the shrouds and everything fit? I mean,
it wasn't enough where it would wouldn't fit. You could just kind of get a little bit more out of it. But nowadays, all the four strokes, I think like Honda and Kawasaki, they end up putting bigger tanks on just because to meet their requirements. But at KTM, I'll have probably four liters some tracks on outdoors left, and we get good gas mileage, so it's not really a problem for us.
Yeah, so you have even after an outdoor, you got plenty of fuel left.
Yeah, like for us, like most race teams, Southwick and Red Butter are two, like, just because of the heat and just the tracks. And yeah, Kate, for us at least, we got probably three liters left at the end of the Moto.
So guys are topping off at the line.
We always top off just to be safe, or if there's like a red flag or something.
Right.
And even Supercross, most guys measure their fuel. I pour it in, because like if there's a red flag or restart,
you're gonna be able to add to.
Yeah, I'm just like, all right, well, no, I'm good. So
yeah.
Right. All right, very cool. All right, what do we got next?
All right, Bernie L. I've been out of the game for some time and just recently purchased a 24 KX 450. I know Rotella was always okay to use in the older bikes. Is it still the case for the newer machines? Thanks for your time.
Yes. Yeah, no problem. We use that. You probably have a sponsor, so I'm not going to put you on the spot. But yes, and there's many teams over the years and builders who have used that and still use it. So, and we've use it. And
But there was some talk that the Rotella formula changed like 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah, 4 or 5 years ago even. And so there's talk. We haven't seen any difference in how it works. So we're still using it.
Yeah, 1540 is really good for the 4 strokes.
You know, it's funny. I remember Dave Miller, DMC. I think he tested every single Shell Fire and Ice and Mobile One and all this, and he kind of came to the same conclusion.
Well, I know some of the race teams have, but I'm not going to say anything because I know. But I know that Rotella is really good, and even some of the race teams had used it in the past while they were, while their other oil companies were coming up with other stuff. So it works well, and it's really inexpensive. And so one of the advantages, guys go, well, why don't you want to spend much? Well, it's a conventional oil, so it's really good on the clutches. It's a lot of synthetics will glaze the clutches, especially if guys are hard on it. So it's really good on clutches. And since it's cheap, you don't feel bad about changing your oil quite often. And that,
this prevents people when they go to their local motorcycle shop and a quart of oil is $16, $18.
Right.
It's like they're like, I don't want to change it because of that.
Yeah, I think we get it at Sam's Club, and it's around $14 to $15 when we get 6 of them at once, 6 gallons at one time.
You used to be able to buy the big 5-gallon bucket I remember at Walmart when we were younger.
I get the 2.5 gallon buckets, and I put them and I pour it into the gallon.
Oh, that's small ones.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's a great option for guys to keep you changing your oil off, and that's another thing. I mean, with regular, and I even had a guy write me this morning, and he said he missed an oil change, and his oil was they put too much time on it, and he was asking how to flush it out. Well, whenever I've burnt a clutch, which isn't too often, but sometimes there's a hill that I keep trying over and over, and so and like on a 2-stroke 300, I just and first of all, KTM clutches are kind of hard to burn up for the most part.
Yeah, I mean, we're pretty lucky.
Right. They are. I mean, but I did burn up a 300 one, and I've burned up some 350 ones. But it's usually just because I'm going up this hill, and then I can't get to the shifter in time to get down to second, so I just fanning it in third to get up there. So I burn up. And so what we'll do is we'll put in, so when we dump that oil, and I'm putting
change the clutch.
Yeah. So, but before I change it, I'll change the oil, and then I'll put in like 3/4 of the amount. And I'll put in like 800 or whatever. Run it for like 2 or 3 minutes, and then dump it out. Just get it hot, dump it out. Do that once or twice to where it starts to come out looking and not smelling like puke.
Yeah.
Okay. Then I'll dump it and then do it. So that's one thing that we've done on, but oil changes regularly is a big thing. And some bikes are different. One thing, the Yamaha 250F, good bike, but it only holds 800. We put in like 840.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Well, no joke. Even with me riding it, 1 hour, it doesn't matter what oil I put in there. 1 hour, it's black.
That's how. Yeah, I think a lot of for a KTM too. Like if you have like I don't know if the Yamaha's the same, but like if you just have their internal clutch parts, we found that if you go to Hints and your oil stays cleaner.
Yep.
But if you have the stock parts, for some odd reason, it just makes the oil dirty, and you think your oil's bad, but it's not. It's just the contaminants.
Yeah.
So this is maybe a dumb question. Do you guys, like at a Supercross, will you change oil throughout the day ever?
No, you learn an off season if your guy's good or bad on the clutch, and for my guy's AP is really good on the clutch, so I know I can go 2 days without changing oil in Supercross. So motocross we do change it after practice just because like it's hot out most races, but there'll be some outdoors like Colorado if it's chilly. I don't touch a thing in the engine.
You don't change the clutch or anything?
No.
But if it's a muddy first moto, would you do it in between motos?
If it's muddy or it's hot, like say Red Bud or if it's a really bad mudder, you will change it just to be safe. But if it's a mudder and the guy's not bad in the clutch and it's cold out, chances are I probably won't change the oil because I know it's. But if it's hot and it's a mudder, then for sure I'll change. So
this is a little bit off topic, but we talked about this before. How bad is a bike like one of the mudders we had this year? How bad is the bike? Like I would say destroyed, but
it's more cosmetic.
Yeah.
Like after San Francisco, my engine internals looked good. It was just rocks got in the cases, and it was more rock damage if anything. And then the rocks got in the brakes, screwed the hangers. It was just more cosmetic, but internally everything. The engines actually stayed pretty cool just because it was cold out, really.
Now, on those races, like you were saying, sticking to your 2 races. If you were in between schedule, you probably would change that schedule.
Yeah, I got lucky because we did Anaheim 1 and then it was San Fran, so I needed a new engine. So it was the luck of the draw. But if it would have been a mudder, and I would just it would have been a new
then you would
engine.
have changed the schedule a little bit. Okay. All right. What do we got next, boys?
I think we should do product spotlight.
Oh yeah. Well, product spotlight right here. So and. Jade isn't familiar with this tire yet. This is if you were still in off road, you know all about this tire. Yep. This is the AT82. This is taking the place of 81. So 81's been on, like if you bought an XCF, this is what would come was an 81. 82 is bidirectional, and so it has this edge right here for the soft, and you have a straight edge right here that's they're saying for more harder pack. We've only been running it so far in this scoopy position, just because I think we like the the appeal of that, because it just looks meaty, right? So far, we've been running it and we really like it. One of the advantages of off-road tires in this, over the years, Dunlop's really never made specific off-road tires. Only since 81 has there really been specific off-road tires. They had the 952 for a little bit. It was a long-lasting tire. It's still available, actually, but that was the first attempt. Now they have purpose-built off-road tires, and I think this is going to be a really good tire for a lot of guys. Hey, would you grab that front over there?
Yeah.
So the front, what's really nice about this front, it's a similar pattern as 3S that a lot of guys really like, and it's got a similar pattern. This front, a few guys have actually already tried this at Supercross, just riding around.
So I just sent this to my guy to test, and he's like, "This is a good tire. I think he's going to race with it in Dallas this weekend."
No way!
Yeah.
It's a small world. I didn't even know that. So that's really cool. So it's really appealing to a lot of guys. It's going to be a wide range of terrain, and so we have it on a couple bikes and really impressed so far. So I think this 82 is going to be a great option for guys and who are even in some areas on motocross and obviously for off-road. So, and we'll have more time on that tire throughout the this coming up fall and winter.
Are both those
spring
released already?
Oh yeah, they're out and available. So they're out there, and we have they're actually this weekend, and we built a Dunlop AT82 bike that I shot with Dirt Bike Magazine.
Oh,
it's really, so I got a 350 XCF, a new one, a new 24, and it's my favorite bike. A 350 XCF to me, and Donnie, we think this bike is the best overall bike. That bike, all we do is an ECU. Jamie at Twisted helps us with an ECU. We do that, and then just some basic other mods, and the things are incredible. So I'm going to have that bike on display this weekend at Glen Helen. On Sunday they're doing the SRA.
The picture back here.
Yeah. Oh yeah. This is Donnie's. Yeah. His. It's awesome. So he's got the 350 SXF, which we do, and he keeps his orange. Believe it or not, I don't like orange. All mine are black and red.
Or so, you're doing an all white one right now.
You're doing a white one.
True.
Yeah.
I mean, do you see what I had up here, Jake?
I like it.
Yeah. So he's all about the orange, and I'm like, hey, there's enough orange out there. So now, and what's funny is, I will say this. I mentioned this. I've told Donnie this before, but when Roger and Ian went over to KTM, I even at that point, and then when Ryan went over like a year later, I'm still like, man, there's no way, dude. There's no way. Okay. Then they started doing well. Even when they started doing well, I'm like, well, that's just they got Roger and they got Ian and they got a good rider, but I'm never gonna own a KTM. Like, for real. Maybe I'd own a trail bike. Okay. And I think my first bike I bought was like a trail bike. Okay. We got like a 200 and then, we got some other bikes, but now I own like a ton of KTMs. I have like 8 or 10,
It's a lot.
Yeah. I have like 8, I have EXCs. I have 3.
I have 4 or something in the garage.
Right.
5.
So I would have bet somebody like even in 2010 through 13, even through 13. So even that's only like 11 years ago, or like 13. And so I would have bet money that I would never own,
So what year did you go to KTM?
2009. I was there for PDS.
You were there for PDS. Was there some discussion? I mean, like, this is going deep with Ryan about, hey, you're going to basically a not really proven brand in Supercross.
We didn't really talk. I had to have my Brownies bike at my house just because I'd have to go to a race. I'd store it in my garage, and he'd sit on it like, oh, it feels pretty good. I think he was just excited for a change. I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
he had to have some good trust in Roger and Ian.
I think that was the tough part for him in 11 because they left to go to KTM. And I think he had built such a good relationship that when they left, he was kind of like, not to discredit the guys around him, he was just kind of lost. Like, he just put all his trust in them.
Sure.
So when he got back together, you could have put him on any bike. I think he had Roger and Ian and the brain's powerful, I feel like, in our sport, like with the mental side.
Oh, for sure.
Well, honestly, with those 3 guys, Ian, Roger, and your brother, it's basically the foundation of where KTM's today.
I feel like it made a big change for sure. And would it have happened without, maybe to some extent, but I don't think that it does to the extent that it did. I think it really was a perfect timing that he was able to win, coming over there and doing it.
I think too, when you win, especially in the 450 class, when you win, it's, what they say, win on Saturdays or win on Sunday, sell on Monday.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing is they implemented it in the production, because I think KTM, like, the before Roger and Ian era, it was always good people and stuff,
Yep.
but I don't think the product was up to where it needed to be racing. And I think they implemented a lot of stuff on the production side of things, and I think that's what's really took off. And the lead time, like they would call Monday, the part would be there by that following weekend. It was just so, compared to the Japanese.
Well, previously KTM relied so heavily on the MXGP series that, and those bikes were all one-offs, that they're like, look, we're doing so good over here.
Even Granny can tell you, he wrote over there, he's like, he had 5 different frames, and he got here, and he's like, oh, it's going to be sick. And he's like, oh, this isn't, like,
it was sick, all right.
Yeah, you're like, oh, dude. So.
All right, Spence, what do you got for us?
This comes from ASAP Huna.
Oh, yeah, he's asked us before.
He asked a lot.
We get some cool names on here.
Yeah. Is there a specific maker model of a dirt bike that's proven difficult to work on more so than others? Thanks for answering questions.
Okay, so one thing I've noticed, I don't know if you have, but because we work on a lot of the newer bikes, and one of the things we've noticed is that honestly, the newer the bikes, they kind of make things more hard. And it's like silly because we work on these 95 CR250s. I know you've built an old bike. You built a older CR, right? So we built these older bikes. Everything was simple. You had two T handles to go do almost everything, right? You just go around, maybe 2 or 3. We were taking the linkage off of a Honda yesterday, and on the new KTM does the same thing. To get one of the linkage bolts out, you got to go loosen the chain guide, the chain slider, or the linkage bolt won't make it out. Yeah, how stupid was that? I'm like, on all the other bikes, if you just turn it, it had a cutaway, and you could just slide it out right under the chain slider. So now you have to undo another bolt on the chain slider to get it out. There's all these little things, and on the new generation bike, KTM's, getting the brake lever out.
That's tough on the 250. 450, I've always thought about if we have a DNF, like it's gonna be tough getting us out of here.
Right.
But I've learned if you take the shock, lift it up, and then you can.
On the 17 450 KTM, you couldn't take off the header pipe without taking off the shock.
Yeah, so
I was like, oh man,
that got fixed. But yeah, the brake lever is. But if you think about it, how often are you ever going to bend and if you bend one, chances are your guy's not riding, for sure not that moto.
Yeah, he's gonna either be at that big of a crash or
But anyway, I would say that honestly, a lot of the newer bikes have gotten more difficult, and also they're trying to move things around to be more centralized, like the ECU and different things. They're getting them in different locations instead of making them as easy as before. So I would say I don't think that's any one brand that's harder to work on.
I think it's just you got all these young designers and they design stuff like, oh, it's cool, but they don't look at the function sometimes.
Yeah.
Like to me, when I was at Honda, they moved the battery by the engine. So you're like trying to take an engine out, like, I got a battery to take off. And now, like, they make it a little bit tougher to do.
Almost in every case, motos. Engineers have never worked on anything in their life.
Yeah, it looks cool, but then you like go to the function of it. It's like it still functions good, but like it's tougher on the mechanic.
Or having an ECU bolted in between the tank and the engine
and the subframe.
It's 4
box.
It's 4 bolts, and they have a washer and a collar and 2 washers.
No, and they're not anticipating people changing ECUs.
Yeah, they're just thinking about your normal customer,
right?
Going out for a Sunday ride.
We go change an ECU, and we're like, oh, this is a job. And so anyway, they all are a little bit more difficult than they used to be.
Book hours at the mechanic shop go way up.
Right. So, but the engines, I will say, one of the cool things about KTM engines is that stop, so that you can be at top dead center and lock the engine.
Cool.
Isn't that cool?
You take that for
granted. I got him to smile there because and I don't do a ton of engine work, but when you do on a KTM, there's a bolt you can undo and then it has a washer on it, and I think they changed it for the new generation bike. You just have to get a different longer
you just get a longer one, and then it's got in the crank, it's got like a little cutout for top dead center, and then
so you lock it. And that motor is locked at top dead center. It's not moving. And so where the other bikes, any of the other bikes, they can move while you're working on them, which is kind of...
It's tough.
Yeah. So this is I don't know why anyone else had never thought of this.
Especially if you're doing in the bike. If you're out of the bike, it's not so tough. But if you're like at the track, like, I'm trying cams today, like, you take that thing for granted.
Yeah. So that's a really cool thing. So there are some cool things that some of the manufacturers are looking at like that. So, all right.
That's awesome. Jeff J says, I finally made the jump to try the 2024 KTM 300 XCW. I haven't picked it up yet, but I've noticed the gearing is smaller than I've seen. I believe the rear sprocket's a 45. I've talked to 2 other guys that have gone up to a 47. I'm wondering what that would do. I don't have a lot of experience changing gearing, and I'd like to know your thoughts on what type of change you'd make.
Okay, so first of all, this bike is really cool. This XCW, a lot of guys are bummed that it's not as fast as the XC, but they're different bikes. They used to be a lot closer and just a different transmission. And I was never a fan of XCWs because they have this wide ratio transmission that's kind of funky. But this 24, my buddy bought one, and it's actually at my house right now. We just did some mapping with Jamie. Jamie actually mapped it just the other day. We've been waiting to do that. And he made a good improvement, which is really cool. So the XCW version still has the premix, not the injector oil fill, where the XC, you premix it. Okay, so this bike, the gearing, it's got a 45 rear sprocket. It's tiny, but we rode it a bunch up in the mountains, and I don't see any reason to change it. We rode it this summer, and we were in 8 to 10,000 feet even, and it was carrying third gear everywhere. If they put that 47 on like his buddy, I think you'd be in fourth in places that you have no business being in fourth gear on. So I'm always quick to want to change gearing, but on that bike, I would leave it alone. That 24 300 XCW is perfect. On our 350 XCFs, on the new generation bike, we go up 2. The stock is a 47, we go to a 49, and that's been working really good. We've been real happy with that. So that hopefully that helps them out. And if you're getting one of those bikes, you're going to enjoy it. And the mapping, if you're going to get one, I would get with Jamie at Twisted. And we're going to test, our next test on that bike is the dome. So he couldn't get the same top or similar top as an XC or SX. And we looked at the part numbers. Everything's the same except the dome. The piston's the same. So this thing's got a ton of room in there. It's got no compression. And so we're going to get we already ordered the SX dome, which conveniently is like $45.
Dude, that's sick.
$45. So we're gonna throw that in. I think we got $7 or $8 in the head O-rings or whatever. So we're just gonna throw that in and try that next. So a really cool bike though. I think for a trail guy that's just doing single track and wants a 2-stroke, that's the bike. We still prefer the 350 XCF. Doesn't sound or smell as cool, but
man, that you can't go wrong with that bike.
I know. But the 2-stroke guys, I can't argue with them that like it, but a lot of them are, I don't know. They're just stuck in there.
That's their position.
Yeah.
How do you guys determine gearing? Like, do you have a chart from all different tracks? Like, I know Supercross is different, but like for outdoors, do you go, okay, at Millville, it's this and this, and then kind of go from there? Or how do you do it?
It's just based off your training, like how your transmission is. Like, we kind of have our base where we want to be, but usually when the guys find a gearing, we more do mapping. Because nowadays, when you mess with the wheel position, it kind of screws their suspension, and then we don't want to screw the suspension guys over. So we try to keep the wheel in one position, and then we tinker with mapping and stuff.
You measure exactly where that wheel position is and try to keep it there.
Well, every weekend you rebuild the bike, and we put new chains on, so it's new chain, new chain buffers and stuff. So wheel always starts the same every weekend, and then you probably goes back 4 or 5 millimeters throughout the day just with the chain and everything loosening, But yeah, so we more do mapping once we find our gear.
So do riders notice that difference in the wheel moving back or forward in their suspension?
I would say the younger ones starting out probably don't know it, but like your top guys, they'll lose their noodle if you change if you go forward, because if you go forward, it'll stiffen your shock. If you go back, it'll soften it. So it's very, very finicky with these top guys.
I can move it an inch and wouldn't notice it.
That's all. I might go all the way back. Like, that's good.
Can rotate the blocks. You'd be like, huh?
Yeah, what? No, it's now a hill climb bike? It's fine. All right, Joe R. I would love a video on a new bike routine. I know you've talked about greasing bearings in previous videos.
Yeah. So I want to get your thoughts. If somebody was to buy a brand new bike, whatever brand, doesn't matter, what would be the main things you'd want to do for maybe before you ride or within the first little bit of on? I know that's the toughest part. When a guy has a brand new bike, there's very few. We're fine doing it, tearing it down, but many guys, they want to go ride it.
Yeah, like I got to ride a new baby. Yeah, no, I would do the head stays, the triple clamp stairs. It almost looks like just put a little drop of oil from the factory. I'd do that. Your linkage, those are probably the 2 things that I would do.
Yep, and that's what we've noticed is the steering stem bearings, and the KTM has a better system of blocking water from getting in
the new
there.
system's better for water getting power washing in there.
Yeah,
But
so
this is across brands. This is not one brand only.
And
it seems like nobody.
And we've had brand new 23, 22s, over the 6 months. And also we have bike washing videos. A lot of guys don't use compressed air when they're blowing their bike up.
And that's especially for the EFI bikes. Even on the factory level, guys get water in their connectors, and then they have bogs and stuff, and you don't realize how water and not blowing out your connectors and stuff.
The TPS at the throttle body, all those types of things. So using compressed air, a lot of times we don't wash bikes if we don't have, hey, we can't blow it off after. People don't understand. It's like, well, hold on, let's wash tomorrow morning. We got if we're out of town or whatever. So you want to have a compressor and be blowing that off. We have videos talking about that, but what he's talking about is, and we'll take the seat off. If we were really in depth, we'd take the tank off after we washed and blow everything and clean everything up. Really nice, right?
Yeah.
Because so much stuff gets done. You think your bike's clean, and also, we lay the bike down on both sides. We have this little system we do when we got people helping, but we're making sure that all those connectors and all the bearing areas are blown off. So we're trying to get that water out of there as much as possible.
Yeah, especially for us on Supercross, we rarely wash unless it's a mudder. You just limit the amount of water getting in it.
Right.
Motocross, you have to do it because it's just that bad, but you try not to, I make a little seat pan from an old seat, cover it up, put a towel, so I'm trying to not spray the connectors, just as I don't want to get any water in there as if I can, just to cause something else. And then a lot of people don't realize a lot of soaps, they are conductive and they can actually cause a lot of your problems in electronics and stuff too. So.
Interesting. So you made a seat base with no foam that's just a blocker.
I just took an old seat base, a KTM seat base, took the foam off, put some duct tape on the holes, and then that's when I wash. I put a towel on the ECU and just cover it up. And
nice.
Okay. That's awesome.
We have to step up our game, Spence.
I have to try that. Yeah.
How about a 3D printed electronics blocker? Get somebody to make one to kind of.
There's a lot of stuff nowadays on the race teams that's 3D printed. There's guys 3D printing like the air filter cover for washing.
Do you guys have a printer?
We don't. We outsource a lot of that stuff at work, but there's guys in departments who can have it at home. And
I've heard stories we don't want to mention, but I know that there's some teams that won't even wash their bikes with the electronics on.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of teams in the pits that they'll just scrape, even if it's a super big mudder, they just scrape it off. They don't want any, because they know it's a problem for them on the racing team side.
Yep.
You need a guy that's just a mud scraper at those races.
But we get used bikes. Spencer he's attest to this. We don't race that regularly. We ride, and if we race, we ride a lot. Okay, but we don't race a ton. We get these bikes. Get a used bike from somebody. It's only got like 15 hours on it, but the air they put new plastic on it, but the air box is all scraped up. It's the worst thing looking ever. I'm like, I gotta buy.
If you're racing Vet 40 out there, scraping your airbox is not going to make you go faster off the line. I promise you. Don't ruin your plastic.
So they scrape it with their plastic scraper, but that's like sharp, and they're just digging grooves.
They do a screwdriver.
And
I've seen guys scrape the mud with screwdrivers.
Oh yeah.
You're not getting any path in there at all.
Well, I guess my theory is, and I think we were talking about this last show. My theory is motocross guys want something to do when they're sitting around all day. They got an hour or 2 or 3 or in some cases a day in between motos.
This is why I love these off-roaders. I do the Works and Big Six and stuff. It's like my race is at noon. I go there at 11:30. I race and I go home.
So motocross guys want to tinker and do stuff, So it makes them feel like that's what they're spraying their sticky chain lube on there while they're sitting around doing nothing.
Yeah, this is the last question for this episode. This comes from John K. We've talked about this a little bit already. He says, I've wondered about this for several years, especially in stadium supercross, say the top 450 riders. Do they do a top end every week out of need or just because they can? Don't seem to be running the 450s very hard in the stadiums. I'm a 50-plus vet rider, and I don't think about it as compared to what the manual says, which is 15 hours on a CRF 450. Thanks.
Okay, so we touched a lot on this already as far as like what Jade and the teams do, but as far as regular guys, one of the things I've noticed, and I've been around enough now, especially KTM guys, I've seen them tear engines apart, 450 engines with 200, 300, 400 hours stock pistons. And I've had guys write me with 350s, or trail riding 350s XES with 400 hours. Guy up, Joe in Wyoming, sends me these cool photos, and he put new rings on the piston. And I think this thing's still going strong, man. It's amazing.
Full budge on that, huh?
Yeah. Now, I will say that there are different qualities of components, from valve train to stock piston, cylinder, Nicosil, all those things contribute to how long things last, right?
Yep.
So one of the things I've noticed is that they're going to put in that book. I think what they have some mistakes in the Honda 250 book. One of the mistakes is the first oil. They tell you to do an oil change at 15 hours and a piston at 15 hours. I'm like, that's really in the book. I'm like, somebody messed up this book.
Yeah.
So the oil change was at 15 and then so was the piston. I'm like, okay. But anyway, so you have to look at that stuff. But and the Kawasaki has really improved their kicks 450. They've improved to a plain bearing, rod. So their bottom ends are going way longer than they used to. They would have problems and guys were getting 50, 60 hours on a bottom end. Now they're getting, well over 100 for regular guys. Yeah. So for regular guys, our theory, like say the Japanese bikes, I say, hey, you can get over 100 hours on a bottom end, and the piston's usually 80 to 100, Now, I don't want anybody blaming me if their piston breaks, but your book is the manual, and those things are set for like a pro, and now the KTM
worst case scenario.
Yeah, KTM bikes, R350s, I would have no problem doing 150 hours before I'd even think about turning it. And one gauge I found is if bike starts to get hard to start, check your valve clearance. The valve clearance is going to be something that's going to be an indicator that something's going wrong.
Yeah.
And that means you've probably sucked dirt at one time, which is possible. I mean, that dirt's what I always say that even though they're dirt bikes, they don't want dirt in there,
And if you always check your oil filters and stuff, if you got, that's always a good indicator if something's going up or.
Yeah, and you can actually tear apart or cut the air filter and look at the paper and see if you see any brass or shavings.
In aircraft maintenance, when they do an oil filter, they always cut those apart and always look for metal.
Yeah. Yep. That's great. All right, it's been a fun show, right?
Yeah.
So now, this part of the show, you're not going to totally understand here, but this is
You're too young. How old are you, Jade?
35.
He's not even old enough, and he had to look up to think about
87. I was born in 88.
So this is before, and my glasses are broken. You like this?
Nice.
I got one lens, so I got to look with one.
It's a monocle.
What happened to the other glass?
It's in the van or something. I'm going to throw it away. All right. So this is Def Leppard. This is the most commercially successful album for Def Leppard, 1987, and this is Hysteria, and it's just a perfect album. I'm getting goosebumps talking about it. It's so good. Have you listened to this album?
I probably heard songs, but not the whole album.
All right, so
I'll download it on iTunes.
All right,
we're gonna have to talk to you about this.
All right, so it's just a perfect album. It's really good. Now, I will say that I like the earlier albums with Pyromania and On Through the Night. Those albums, the earlier ones with High and Dry and Stage Fright and all those, I do kind of like the harder rock then, but this is more appealing in long term, and a lot of the hard rock will have the best hard rock albums over the years, and it was kind of like over the years it would change, but it was like Guns N' Roses' Appetite for Destruction was kind of the top album, right?
Yeah.
Okay, for hard rock guys, and over the years, and then you get into the problem is Metallica with the Black Album, right, would go into that whole a little bit into the metal. Into the thrash, let's say, but it appeals to both, right? But this album has kind of taken that over because everybody's gotten older, it's more what do you call it? We're older, so we got
nostalgic.
All right, Spencer, you're going to have to read these for us.
You want me to read?
Yeah.
It's all right.
Read off the.
Do you not have it memorized?
No.
I would expect you to.
I think we got Women and.
All right.
Rocket.
Ready?
Yeah.
Starts off Women, Rocket, Animal, Love Bites, Pour Some Sugar on Me, Armageddon It, Gods of War, Don't Shoot Shotgun, Run Riot, Hysteria, Excitable, Love and Affection.
Yeah.
I mean, Pour Some Sugar on Me. Come on now.
Yeah. And then Love and Affection at the end is like it's nearly a perft album. It really is.
Yeah.
So nowadays most people don't listen to albums in their entirety.
Yeah, there's like two songs and you're like, oh.
Right. So now so for us when we grew up, we'd have it was tapes before this, but then when we'd drive around, this would be when it was a new album, it'd be in your deck, and if you're lucky enough to have a CD player in your truck like I did.
I had a 6-disc changer.
Nice. Yeah,
Under the seat.
Fancy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the last one of those just died in my F-250, so now I just don't even have a disc player. But anyway, I can put discs in there in my DVD player in there.
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, you would just listen to it on repeat for the first 3 or 4 weeks that album came out, and you'd memorize every song in order. So a lot of times when there's a song on the radio and it's finishing, or like on XM where I'm starting to sing the next song. Like but
when you were traveling, then we had no Sirius XM, so you had to do this.
Yes.
Yeah,
because there was no way to.
The FMF was painful. The FM was painful. FM radio was painful. You would just be.
Oh, there was only AM in some places.
Yes, it was terrible. So So anyway, that album is just amazing. Great album.
You get cool pictures of all
the album art. That's always a big thing when you would own a CD.
Yep.
And you'd get all the notes, the
There's
liner
something
notes.
about owning a CD, right? Because if I have, Spotify or whatever, let's say one day they're like, oh, we're going to pull our music from Spotify.
Yeah.
Oh, you don't have it. You don't get to listen
And
to
they
it.
do that.
And they do that.
And they do
You
it
don't get to
every
listen
now
to it
and then. All
anymore.
of a sudden, you're like, I heard this last week, and now it's gone.
And now it's gone.
Gone.
So owning
Anyway,
it.
that's a great album. And we'll have to name the show. We'll pick one of those songs.
This is going to be hard.
Yeah, it's gonna be hard.
We've had some hard ones.
No,
But probably
it's going to be no.
Pour some sugar
Pour
on me?
some sugar.
All right.
You think it's going to be that?
Oh yeah, that's what it has to.
That's a
what-
long YouTube title.
Listen, it doesn't matter. I'm the one.
So we named
I'm
the
the
show
one editing
a
the
song
show.
from. We named the show a song from the disc.
Oh, that's sick.
Yeah, we're just learning as we go, but that's kind of how it's.
We got this little music segment at the end.
All right,
I don't know
because-
if it's because old guys work on bikes, I think,
and a lot of old guys, and then younger guys have caught on to when they hear that in our shop and stuff, and they're like, "That's really cool," and they're asking like, "Who sings that?" Like, and it's really
what
funny.
vintage band is that?
Right. So it's really cool. So, anything else, Donnie? What's your last parting
Yeah,
shot here for us?
I got a question for you. So when you're working on a bike, kind of go through your process when you start a project and finish it, because I know that you line a lot of things out. So kind of like, what do you start laying out when you go into a project, and how do you start laying that out?
Well, I guess the big thing on these modern bikes, there's so little you have to do that it's typically for us, it's mainly suspension is going to be the one. So like, who am I going to get to do suspension for us, and what do we want to change and make it better? Suspension, and then next would be ECU on these fuel injected bikes. That's really the main things you need to do. And then of course we like to get not just a cool looking exhaust, but one that sounds good as well. Some of the bikes, stock bikes nowadays, are almost unrideable with the stock exhaust on. The pitch is, it's not just that they're loud, but the pitch is deafening. Like there's a couple out there, especially in the 250s. Well, even one of the 450s is so bad that it just hurts your ears when they come by with a stock muffler on. And you think it's blown out. That's what it sounds like. Stock, it sounds blown out. So we'll get that exhaust on there. And then like Jade was saying, we have it stripped. When the suspension's off, we immediately, we have a CRF we're doing right now. We have the suspension off. We have the swing arms off, linkages off. We've cleaned everything because the bike has like 4 or 5 hours on it. So we've cleaned everything, and we're going to grease everything while it's apart. And the radiators, I got those off, and I sent those to ICW. They strengthened them.
Oh, yeah.
Now on your guys' radiators in the race teams, do you guys just run stock, or are they braced up at all?
No, we just run stock because usually if they break, or they usually don't have much problem with the breaking or bending, and we just put new. I mean,
Can you say, like, I don't know if you can say this or not, how many bikes do you have on the truck in parts?
Between bolts and parts, there's probably about 6, 7 of every part on that truck.
Okay.
But then
That's shared throughout the team, though.
Yeah, but with engines, because it's cool KTM, I think a lot of manufacturers do this. There's one frame for 250, 450, 350, so it actually helps us not have as many parts on the truck. So a lot of the stuff's interchangeable, but yeah, I probably have like 6, 7 of every part on the truck. And then
who kind of organizes that truck? Because
the mechanic, us mechanics.
So do you each have your own section of drawers there?
No, it's basically like a mini parts room. So we will go and organize it. So it's try to make it home away from home. So
You do it together.
Yeah, usually do it together.
Yeah.
So
Now, I noticed in the shop they have barcodes and they scan and check out parts, so you guys know the inventory.
Yeah, so
on the truck, how do you guys do that?
on the truck, I just make sure I have enough on there, and then if it gets low, I just take care of
Reorder.
myself. But the way our company works is we have a big parts room.
Yeah.
And it's an open warehouse. So then it's like you go to Target, you scan an item, and then we get charged for it. So it's kind of, we're able to have a lot of inventory, but we're not getting charged until we use it. So it's kind of nice that way.
Interesting.
It's so cool, the parts. I was looking at it when I did the tour in there. Really cool. So then on the other bikes, like on the old bikes, like on your bikes we've talked about, and our CRs and yours.
He built a CR.
Yeah, gorgeous.
Amazing,
So when you tear them down, it's just tearing them all the way down the frame and seeing what's broke, bent, or cracked, or and what needs to be. And some parts are a lot of parts can be cleaned up, especially with vapor blasting now.
Yeah, that vapor blaster is game changer.
Yeah, and Sano Metal Finishing has a dry blasting. Have you seen that?
I haven't seen that one.
So he does a really good job with this. So it's basically a vapor blast, like the same media material, but he does it in a dry cabinet.
Oh, okay.
And it does a totally different type of finish. And so he some stuff is better. So that's why he came up with this. So it's really cool.
That's smart.
So he has 2 different cabinets. So some stuff and will come out differently. And then he has a sandblast for sandblasting, which is, the old school thing. He has that as well for like rusty parts or whatever.
Yeah,
so, somebody's got some of that kind of stuff. So anyway, so that's what we do on the old bikes. So.
All right, that's all I got.
All right, man.
Awesome.
Well, it's been awesome having you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Appreciate
First
it.
guest ever. I'm really excited you're here. This is, and I went through GL to.
Yeah, he texted me. He's like, "Hey, can you just like, heck yeah, I'll do it."
Yeah, because him and I do a lot of stuff together. And
We took him riding this fall. We took GL and Donnie and Spencer met us there up in Utah. We went this epic trail ride.
He's telling me he had a blast.
Yeah,
it was so much fun.
Yeah, we had just 2 perfect days of trail riding. So one quick GL story. The funny thing, and Donnie was he was stoked that GL was this way, and so was my other buddy, because I would think that he would be kind of brave, right? We went to the second day. We went to this area and he did great. The first day was this gorgeous canyons. It's a place called Green River, and it has just amazing sand, a mix of everything. The next day we go to this area that's like out of Wile E. Coyote movie.
like the moon.
Like the moon. It has these razorbacks, right?
Yep.
Dude, he was screaming, dude. And we had cardos on. We run cardos, which are great to communicate with. He had the end, and he's just like, I ain't doing that.
He's afraid of heights. Did you know that?
Yeah, because when you do Christmas trees or Christmas lights, he's always going on the ladder. He's scared to go up on the ladder.
Oh man, he did not like these Razorbacks are like, I don't know how to explain it. They're kind of like Beaumont.
It's like Beaumont.
It's like Beaumont,
Yeah.
and they're just Razorbacks, but they're tall. They're 50 to 60 feet tall. And then you guys rode over to one that was like up the side of the mountain, and he was like, "Oh no, I'm not doing this."
That's funny.
So it was pretty funny. So we had a group of like 5 or 6 of us, and Spencer and I are the only ones doing all these ridges.
I did them.
And did you do some of them?
Donnie was doing some of them,
Okay.
but at the end, Donnie also crashed.
Oh, yeah.
Twice the day before, so we're giving him the benefit of the doubt.
That's right. And my buddy Jim was
I think I
just
broke
so
my
stoked.
Yeah.
My buddy Jim was stoked that GL was like, he's like so good. And I kept telling Spencer, shh, don't say anything. Don't say anything on the cardos, because when they'd hear us, I'm like, just get him to come up here. And
Trick him, try to get him
Trick
onto
them
a
into
Razorback.
fearing for their lives.
We were just gonna go down and then leave, and then that's what happened. They all went back to the truck, and then we got back like 30 minutes later, and we went on another loop where I did less
Man.
Razorbacks because that was nice.
It's just a really cool area, and it's in Utah. And then there's this famous shot of Ken Block on a UTV doing a pivot around this like natural rock berm thing.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of bike jumps have been done out there. Tom Parsons does a lot of freestyle stuff out there, and a bunch of other guys. And we got to that spot, and just some neat areas. So anyway, it was really cool. He's fun to go. So hopefully, if next fall or
Come with you guys.
yeah. In October, it just depends how much preseason testing you got going on.
It's crazy. We got not straight rhythm, supercross, motocross, and then if you're lucky to go to Designations, there's no more off season.
No.
You get maybe 2 weeks.
So I guess we were supposed to end the show, but how often do you get to ride? Do you still want to ride?
I don't have the itch anymore. I'm so out of shape. And if I get hurt, then I'm screwed for work.
Yeah.
With my hands.
And now that is one thing I'll tell kids out there that want to be a mechanic is
Said
that
this too.
you're going to stop riding. I mean, and all what I've said over the years is, because I'm old. Okay, I'm closer to your dad's age. I don't know if I'm older than your dad.
My dad just turned 60.
Oh yeah, so I'm younger than your dad, but
He just
still
turned 60.
And so I still enjoy riding a lot. We're gonna go riding today.
That's
And,
good though.
Yeah,
Enjoy and have fun.
And the problem is a lot of the guys in the industry, like he just said, immediate ones. Hey, I'm not in shape. He's not gonna be able to do it long, because with riding, you need to be riding it regularly. People don't understand, if you're not riding once a week minimum. A minimum of once a month. But if you're not riding once a week, you're not kind of being safe, right? That's another thing. You don't feel safe, so you go out there and I go, I'm gonna go to Glen Helen. I'm like, I'm riding around a bunch of guys that ride all the time.
Yep.
And you don't feel safe.
Especially for riders who have, like you, who have in the past gone very fast.
Well, it's like my brain remembers.
You're
but
like,
my body can't.
I was this fast at one time, and you like maybe try to do that, and it's just not right,
and
right?
then it just boom like that. And you're on the ground.
So
And then the other thing he said immediately was, if I get hurt, I'm done. He can't be at the track with a broken wrist or
and we're screwed for work.
All right.
Well, listen, we got to finish up. We're an hour.
it's the longest episode.
We're over an hour into
Yeah, we're over
this.
an hour.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks, guys. Hopefully you enjoy. Like, comment, subscribe, all that kind of stuff, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.
We work with some great companies, and here's a list of those right now. Dunlop motorcycle tires, Wiseco piston, Vinco air shocks and dirt bike parts, FMF exhaust, Decal Works graphics, Pro X racing parts, Recluse clutch revolution, Motion Pro specialty motorcycle tools, Works connection, Uni filter, Klotz oil, Cometic gasket, MX plastics, JE Pistons, Cardo Systems, ODI Bars and Grips. And remember, if you shop Rocky Mountain, use our link from our site, Linktree, or link in description of the videos. Thanks for watching and listening. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.